Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, my co-host here, Anthony Orvardo. We are here with the man, the myth, the legend, Brian Walker of DB Academy, our friend. Coming to talk about the Giants. You know, Jabrill Peppers, Xavier McKinney, Darnay Holmes, all these guys he's worked with and has really good relationships with, and he knows a lot about their game. And, you know, as you've probably noticed this year, if you're a fan of the team, Jabrill Peppers got injured. You know, he wasn't really used that well in the first portion of the season. The Giants tried to shake up their defense, started to revert back to their 2020 unit and their scheme, and it got a lot better. And we're kind of sitting here like, why didn't they start out the season that way? Why isn't Jabrill Peppers playing as much? You know, where's that energy? We saw it against the Saints. He came out and he had a great game. He was excited to win the overtime coin toss. And you know, Brian was telling us before the podcast started, energy is so important to a team. And everything that goes into building an offense or a defense comes from having leadership, energy on the field, behind in the locker room. It's all so important. And I'm really excited for you to talk to us about how important that is, especially with Jabrill Peppers and what he brings to this team, Brian. But before we get started, how you doing today, my friend?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm happy to be back. I feel like that uncle who comes back for every party or birthday event. So it's an honor. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. It's a pleasure, guys. And thank you for having me back. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, it's our pleasure as always. You know, we always love to talk to you, and your expertise does not go unnoticed here, especially for the fans of the podcast. You know so much about the game and have direct connections with some of these players and really their game, and especially like guys like Xavier McKinney, who took such a big step this year. You've been an instrumental part in helping him elevate his game, take it to really a Pro Bowl level. He didn't get a Pro Bowl this year, but he was close. I think next year we're talking about a different situation because he really had that rookie season that was cut short due to the foot fracture. So, the first half of this year was an extension of that. The second half, guys started picking up interceptions every single week. It was looking like Trayvon Diggs in the backfield back there, but he's actually shutting receivers down. So, it's nice to see. But Xavier McKinney really taking a step forward this year. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about his development, really what you guys have been working on to take him to that next level.
Yeah, no. Biggest thing with X right now has just been all mental in terms of we communicate, especially through social media and through text. But he's a guy where, like, when I worked with him, I was just like, he's in tune, he listens, and he's humble to learning. Like I've said before, similar to Darnay, these are young men who've been 4 or 5 stars all their life. But when you speak to them, you wouldn't think, they were brand name schools they went to, so very good guys. Xavier is a guy who, like I said, as I can get more detail into it, he's continuing to get better and want to learn, so that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Anthony, when you look at Xavier McKinney, how excited are you about his progression and really, like, what are the things that you've noticed? I know you made a video about him a while ago saying Xavier McKinney is going to be a star. And this was before he even played it down with the Giants. Anthony called this out a long time ago. And then you started working with him and suddenly Xavier McKinney's a star. So it's like, it all really comes to this beautiful cohesion and results. And Anthony, when you're looking at him, what are you seeing from his progress up to this point?
Yeah, I'm thrilled with Xavier McKinney. Of course, you mentioned it in the summer, right after they drafted him. I made that film breakdown video, said Xavier McKinney is going to be a star. I knew it. You could see it coming from a mile away. He was so talented at Alabama, and, he has his head on straight. He's a smart player, and he really knows the game of football and loves the game of football. So when I saw him start to really break out this year, that was no surprise to me, especially knowing that he's working with Brian and the track record that Brian has and everything that he's done with other defensive backs. I knew Xavier McKinney was going to be a star. This was his breakout year, and I'm super happy that we got to see that come to fruition and really watch him take that next step. And I'm excited to watch him continue to take those next steps going forward with the New York Giants.
Yeah, and even to add, working with him, the biggest thing I noticed is how long he is. Even though he's around 6 foot, 6'1", his arms seem like 6'6". So, a lot of stuff that we worked on, even for that day or two, it was just more or less like just working on making sure we shadow guys. Because a lot of times you get to the next level, you're not going to be the strongest guy. You're not going to be more physical than Gronk, So sometimes it's good to even play that basketball where you shadow the guy and you're right in his pocket. And then you're able to see the field and just different movements. I think for next year, if I get a chance to work with him again, we're going to work on a lot of different details similar to Brill, just work on even perfecting footwork and ladders and even cornerback drills. Because you never know, especially with this defense, the way the guys move around. So I think for him, it's just being versatile and, maximizing his potential, which he has.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen Xavier McKinney play the slot before, so that's not something that he is incapable of doing. Now, when you're looking at McKinney, the one thing that I really noticed that he's developed is a really, really intelligent IQ. When you're watching him in the backfield, he baits quarterbacks into throws. There's been multiple times this season, one last week and one against, I believe it was the Raiders, and Derek Carr. He baits quarterbacks into throws. He starts to maneuver to the opposite direction, but he has in the corner of his eyes a peripheral vision. He's looking at the quarterback, right? And the second the quarterback, prepares his launch to go downfield, he's really throwing to the boundary. You see Xavier McKinney and why, he should have been a first-round pick, because he has unbelievable sideline-to-sideline speed. Paired with IQ, his ability to undercut routes and actually catch up to the football on deep throws is something that really flashes off the screen when you watch him. At this free safety position, especially when he's in single high coverage, he is able to make that run from the middle of the field to the boundary and undercut throws. Have you seen that, as a big portion of his game? Because that wasn't really what we saw last year. He was still getting his ropes underneath him, but ultimately this season he's taken that step forward. He's learning from guys like Logan Ryan, how to bait quarterbacks and to make those throws. How important is it for a safety in this single high look to be able to do that?
Well, it's one of those things where, nowadays quarterbacks are being taught at a young age to recognize disguises. 5 years old, they have quarterback coaches. So for a lot of DBs, they don't get the opportunity to learn how to go sideline to sideline, how to bait and how to disguise certain coverages. I think for Xavier, because he comes from a background like Alabama, where you have a guy like Nick Saban, who has the luxury to call Bill Belichick, who has the luxury to call different type of athletes, he's been prepped. The blessings that he has, the gifts that he has is, like I said before, he's very long. And, the great thing I would say about the Giants and the staff has done, with Logan Ryan being a leader, with Jabrill being a leader, Darnay and a lot of other guys, even Love, I think they share information overall as a whole. Because you can tell Xavier's jump was not just solely just Xavier, but it had to be information that Darnay shared. And I could tell you from that, Darnay and Xavier are close enough where they're really good friends. And just information through the group. I think that's a testament to, I would say, the DBs in the locker room. But Xavier, yeah, he's disguising, he's getting comfortable. He reminds me of the young man from the LA Chargers, Darwin James, number 33, who's a Pro Bowler. Similar build. Comes from great brand name schools. So Xavier should have made the Pro Bowl, but I think right now they held it against him that the Giants season was going to, so it's unfortunate, but I think next year, if he continues, he's a Pro Bowl guy.
Easily. And it's not just because of the defense, really. It's the offense's fault, right? Because when the defense is on the field that much, you're going to get beat, right? Eventually, you're going to get beat. You're going to get exhausted. You're going to get gassed. And that really is what I think implicated Xavier McKinney at times. He's just tired. Like, it's the end of the season. The offense can't stay on the field for more than 2 minutes. And the defense is just absolutely gassed and exhausted. And if you've ever played a professional sport and your teammates aren't helping you out, it's incredibly difficult to carry the load by yourself. So, I would say that plays a big factor. If, would you agree with that the offense really has kind of put the defense in a tough spot at times?
Well, a great defense is an even better offense. So I look at it like that. If you can control the run game, then that gives time for our linemen, who are bigger gentlemen, to get a breather, especially for the DBs. If you're running, it's a track meet. I always tell these guys, proper training, if you're a DB or a corner, even a receiver, train like a 400-meter runner, because that includes speed, strength, mental capacity, work. So a lot of times, if your offense doesn't have a rhythm and it's 3 and out, even as a defensive guy, I can't check and see if I did something wrong, because as soon as I get off the field, I got to go right back on. And that, like we talked about in the beginning, energy plays a part. When offense scores, defense is ready, they're ready to make a stop. So if you keep seeing the opposite side not do as well, it can be kind of a drag. And anyone doing more than 60 plays in a game is a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's just, you're not prepared. Like, I've been in situations where I've had guys call me and go, "Coach, I just did 80 plays." And then they can't get out of the bed. So if this is every week, and especially that the season's extended, so you're going more than 17 weeks of this, it's tough for the body. And this is where I feel like why a lot of the injuries happened this year, because even last year, the offense didn't really have such a rhythm. A lot of these guys, their body's worn out.
Yeah, and even so, the offensive guys are getting injured, and they're barely playing at all. So it's kind of interesting.
It's
What do you think it is though? Like the injuries, like that's a weird kind of situation going on.
I think that a lot of the guys in the offseason are being babied. And what I mean by that is, like anything, if I have a new car and it's a Ferrari, I have to drive it. I got to drive it. I can't drive it at 20 miles an hour. And then when it's time to perform, try to go 100. Your body is not going to work. And a lot of times these guys, when they get these injuries, non-contact injuries, because they're training at 30, 40%, or they're not working on the details of their feet, which is important. They're not running. A lot of these guys, and this is the era of videotape me and make sure that I look like I'm working the hardest. And I don't want to be old school where back in my day, we walked 30 miles in the snow. But you think about it, last year during the pandemic, when guys were able to work and not have to be under certain rules and guidelines, guys came back healthy. Guys came back ready to perform. I think this year, sometimes, whether it's in a facility or you're in a commercial facility, a lot of guys don't want to test that and go, well, we don't want to get injured. Instead of saying, what can we improve? And it's just like track meets. In order to get faster, you have to run fast. So a lot of receivers, when they're stopping on a dime and they're not performing that in practice or they're not performing that in the offseason, it takes a toll on your body when you get to the game. So
yeah, and when we're talking about, players being on the field too long, right? There were some games last year, I'm pretty sure Jabrill was on the field for over 90 snaps. Do you think that high volume of snaps with the offense not being able to stay on the field and then the defense just having to play more and more, do you think that also leads to some of these injuries? Of course, with Jabrill also dealing with an injury right now.
Of course, there's wear and tear in anything you do. And with this sport, I've always been taught, and I've always told kids that it's 100% injuries. Whether it's a pinky to an elbow, you're going to get injured in this game. And like we talked about, Alex, the more opportunities you give the defense, the more it's going to sway to the offensive side because, it's a lot of reps. And like you said, being on the field, 90 snaps is not normal. It's not normal in anything. And it's almost like that tires. It's a wear and tear. And unfortunately, your body can hold up or withstand so much. We're not meant to go through, we're not Rams. So we're not meant to just collide all the time. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. And Jabrill, his energy, he goes hard. I think he got injured off the play where he got chopped and then he did
like a punt return. It was a punt return.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't ever want to see Jabrill Peppers taking punts because he's too important to the defense. I don't know why the Giants do this. Why do you have special teams players if you're not going to use them for special teams?
Yeah.
Like I love Jabrill and his energy as a kick returner, but he's too important to the defense as a linebacker, safety. You can do so many things with him. He's too important for us to be wasting him on punt returns and risking injury. Both of his significant injuries during his tenure with the Giants have been from punt returns. He missed half a season due to a hip injury he suffered during a punt return. And this season he gets shot blocked right at the beginning of a return, and he tears his ACL and twists his ankle. It's just like I feel like they learn eventually. It's ridiculous.
And truth be told, that was actually he was having his best game. It would have been the second, because the game before he did well, he was getting his groove, and then this game it was he was doing well. I think like I said, he got cut by the running back. He did a somersault, and then he sacked the quarterback, and we were like, what the hell? So he was having a really good game, and you're completely right. You don't once in a while, you have guys who are super special, but for Jabrill, you need him in the defense. You need his voice. You need his energy. And it's tough when you lose a guy like that, especially on special teams. So,
yeah, and even when we're talking about the volume with him doing the punt returns, I'm looking at it right now. He was doing 1 to 2 per game. And then in that game that he got injured, he returned 4 punts. So just those extra snaps, like that right there is enough to put a player in danger. But then I also want to talk about his usage on the field, right? Because this year we saw Jabrill Peppers they wanted to get him more involved on special teams, it seemed, than they did on the defensive side of the ball, which was really confusing and peculiar. And I know I'm sure you have some thoughts about that with the way that the Giants were using him early on the season before he got injured.
Yeah, my biggest thing is if it's not broke, why try to fix it? And I think last year, and this is solely my opinion. And I think last year they did a great job in terms of moving the athletes they had around on the field. They understood the dynamic. And then, sometimes when you don't have a lot of time and you got to get this right, you lock in a little bit more. So I think the coaches were locked in. They understood who they had on their roster. I think this year might have got too comfortable, but also I know it's a contract year. I know it's a business. Maybe you don't want to pay guys. It was unfortunate how it played out because I think for the secondary that they have, they're very talented, from Logan to Bradbury to even you got the kid Adoree Jackson. We haven't even spoken on him, and the biggest thing for Jabrill, I felt like, continue to use him the way what made him successful. Move him around. Yes, let him blitz. And I think at the end, before he got hurt, they were doing that more. But, you got a guy who can play on all three levels. Why not use those capabilities? Imagine seeing Jabrill and Xavier together on the same field. Those are two of the most athletic safeties ever in the NFL. You get these guys like that, you take advantage of that. And Logan Ryan, no disrespect to Logan Ryan, but I don't think he can play that position that Jabrill plays, where he's good enough to cover, but in terms of being able to just blow up running backs,
he's not physically imposing.
I don't think that's Logan Ryan's game, and I think you use Logan Ryan for his strengths. You don't want to use him to just blitz and blow up people. He's a guy who's played corner before, He's a cover guy as well, but him and Jabrill are two different things, and I think they tried to replace it and go, hey, we got Logan Ryan, he could do the same thing. I think it was one of those, but I just think it didn't pan out. It didn't work out for what they thought it was going to be, because at the end of the day, the way how physical Peppers is, you can't match that. There's only a few DBs who are that physical or who are that comfortable being in a box,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I mean, him and Logan, I don't think they play similarly at all, but I wonder if maybe the Giants were looking at Xavier McKinney and thinking they play similarly. Maybe they can get McKinney more involved. And like you mentioned, the business aspect of it, I don't want to sound too much like a conspiracy theorist, but, Jabrill's coming off of this big year last year. I mean, career year for him. And then all of a sudden, they're just not interested in getting him involved with the game plan. Safeties, their contracts are getting higher and higher every year. Again, not trying to be conspiracy theorist, but it was just really peculiar timing that all of a sudden they don't want to get Jabrill on the field. And I know he was even asked about it. This was a contract year for him. He was unfortunately injured. And going forward, his future now with the Giants is a little bit murky. He was asked, does he still want to be with the Giants? He said he wants to be with a team that's going to win. Giants not winning. I don't know if you have any insight on how he's feeling right now. Of course, he's going through his rehab and physically, but maybe he's looking elsewhere or having, some second thoughts about New York. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
In terms of that, I think he would love to be in New York. I think for him, he just wants to have success. As you can see, getting drafted to the Browns, that organization has ups and downs, and then you go back home and there's hope. And then you have talent. I think sometimes it's just everyone's disappointed and they're still in the season. So I always tell guys to give him time to just kind of refresh, reboot. I think he looks good in the Giants uniform. I think he could have a hell of a career in the Giants uniform. I, for selfish reasons, want him to stay, because I think what he matters to not just the Giants on the field, but off the field is important. It's not too many guys who are, All-Americans in high school, 5 stars, and then go to Michigan, Heisman Trophy guys as a defensive guy, and then you go to your hometown, and then just Jersey and New York loves you, and it just does well for the Giants brand to keep him. But wherever he goes, I want him to be happy. My biggest thing is the last conversation I had was just continue to be happy and understand why you play the game. But it's tough when you're in a season where you have a lot of talent and you're just not performing to the level that they want to perform. I think that's a conversation that these guys need to all sit down and just, put their hats on and figure it out. It will be disappointing if he leaves. I say that.
Absolutely. And he's doing well with his rehab and everything.
Yeah. There was a video he was doing step ups,
Yeah, I
and
saw that.
he did not get skinnier. I will say that. I had to do a few push ups. I was like, damn, I got to work on my New Year's resolution, man. I was like, what's going on? So he's a worker. Like I said, the first time I met Jabrill, he was a worker, and he was the hardest worker I've ever met. And I've played with NFL guys, and I say it like this: one thing about him, he's locked in. He takes on challenges, and he comes from a family of faith. So I know he's going to come back even better. So
yeah, I mean, these days the medicine and the stuff they got these guys doing, they come back from these injuries and they're totally fine after a season.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Jabrill Peppers' situation reminds me of someone else that's in New York who just came home, Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker with the Knicks comes to the Knicks. He has a couple of games. He's, they're not using him correctly, and then they bench him. Then he comes back and he balls out. And it's like, wait a second. Why were you guys not using him the right way? Like, why weren't you using him with Julius Randle and cohesion? You're letting Randle do ISO, and you're not letting Kemba play off of him. And this is the same thing with Jabrill Peppers. I feel like they could have built a more efficient system around Jabrill Peppers where they could have used him as a key piece in it. Instead, they put him into this complementary role. And I think that's where they went wrong with him, is like they tried to have him be a complement when he's a playmaker. I mean, he's a guy that can rush the passer from a safety spot, from a linebacker spot. He's a guy that can do a myriad of different things from guarding tight ends to, just playing in this zone coverage scheme or man coverage. We saw him last year against Seattle, when he had that awesome play in the end zone against their tight end, and he made a huge pass breakup, and the Giants ended up going to win that game. For football players and athletes in general, it's all about momentum and confidence, right? When you don't use a player and then they get beat, you start to doubt yourself. You say, am I able to do that? You have to let a player have a couple of good plays and then start to play off of that. Give him a good job. I just watched a video of George Kittle going up to Trey Lance after he threw that touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel last week, and he's going crazy to Trey Lance. He's like, great job. I'm really happy for you. I'm really proud of you. And I'm like, that's what real teammates do. They hype each other up. They get each other confident. And that's why you see guys, the underdogs, end up playing really well. I mean, like the Victor Cruz story, there's so many Giants stories out there that, just came out of nowhere. And you look at guys like Xavier McKinney learning from Logan Ryan, saying, good job, man. Jabrill Peppers bringing the energy against the Saints. All of that stuff builds confidence, and it impacts every single player. And I think, they really didn't do Jabrill Peppers the right service and putting him in this complimentary role, taking him out, not letting him get momentum, putting him in specific plays where he was like, I need to be on the field. I need to lay a big hit in the run game and then bounce back and rush the passer and bulldoze Chris Carson again. These are the type of things that make guys like Jabrill Peppers, because they're dogs. They're guys who need that to eat all the time. They're not guys that you can feed morsels every now and then. They need the momentum. And I think that's kind of where they did not play to his mentality. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the best way I can describe it.
No, and like anything, success is situational as well. Like a flower. If you put the flower in the sun, it's going to grow. If you put it in the dark, it'll die. Like, it's one of those things where you put people in where they fit. I'm not going to do a puzzle with crayons. It does not make sense. So a lot of the times we tend to go, and I've had these mistakes as a coach myself, where my system is going to be able to work with anyone. And a lot of times it doesn't. We all learn different, So like you said, you can't use, and let's just be clear. How many safeties we know, starting safeties we know, can return punts in the NFL?
Very little,
which means he's one of the most athletic safeties to ever come into this league. It is very rare you have corners do it, but it's very rare to have your strong safety be your return guy, which I'm saying is he's very athletic. So anybody who's that athletic, you have to put him in a position where, let me react, let him make plays. I think the last game where, like I said, he flipped over the running back and he made the sack, I think they started going, well, you know what? Let's stop trying to play around. Let's let this junkyard dog loose, So I think right now they have to sit down in the boardroom and figure out what they want to do with the draft first, Unfortunately, our quarterback is hurt. So how are we going to develop him? I still think he's a hell of a quarterback. I just think success is situational, At the end of the day, like I said, reading what you guys have said, and it makes a lot of sense. What are we going to do offensively to help the defense? And that's really that's the situation, because it's no way Philadelphia is really that much better than us.
No way.
Cowboys is not that much better.
Just better coaching, ultimately.
Ultimately, yeah. And ultimately, how is it resonating with the athletes? That's the biggest thing. Are you being able to communicate what you put on the board, or what you put in your mind and what's on the board to on the field? And I think at the end of the day, I'm hoping they get it right, because I was a fan of what Joe Judge is bringing and what Graham was bringing. I was excited about last year's defense. I was excited to see Darnay Holmes grow into becoming even a bigger performer. You know, I thought when he got hurt at the end of the season, that hurt the Giants' playoff chances. So I was kind of disappointed to see how they used him in terms of that, because like I'm a big believer in Holmes. I think he can play outside as well. And, you know, you and we've spoke on Bradbury in terms of whether he's a number 1 or number 2. But I think ultimately, if you have a guy who can play inside and out, they need to find a way to make sure Holmes is one of the factors, So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Holmes was the next player that I wanted to ask you about. You know, he's one of my favorite young Giants players, 23 years old. I want to know if you've spoken to him, how he's doing with the rib injury. Obviously, he got a nice interception, then took a shot to the ribs. I think he cracked a couple, not so good there. But he also just didn't see the field that much this year, and that was really confusing, because I thought last year, you think back to that Seahawks game and the Bengals game, he had a couple really nice pass breakups and an interception. He looked like a young, promising player. So, again, I was confused by the usage of Darnay Holmes early on this season.
I hope it's not because of me, because I just feel like, and I'm not even like doing a spotlight, but I felt like it was weird. Like the guys that I worked with, they did very well. And then the next year, it was just like, boom. But ultimately with Holmes, I was confused as well, because I've been on record to say, and might sound crazy, guys, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's better than Bradbury. And I might be biased, but I felt like when you have a guy who can play inside and out, who can tackle, who comes from an NFL pedigree and a family, and he's a man of faith, he just was exceptional. And mind you, he did not give up a touchdown. Also, the number 1 receiver for the Cowboys, which is, in my opinion now, CeeDee Lamb, he did very well against CeeDee Lamb. Very well in the slot, which is one of the hardest positions to guard, So I just was like, he's coming up. And I guess now everyone's saying Locke is the number 1 receiver for the Seahawks. He did very well against Lockett.
I remember that too. We broke that game down.
He's done very well against Pro Bowl receivers. And it's just one of those things where, like, okay, he's not giving up a touchdown. He's done well against number 1 receivers. We got to get this guy on the field. And like I said, I don't know what's going on in the locker room in terms of communication, but from a fan, and I'm speaking as a fan, and I'm taking away the coaching hat, from a fan, at the end of the day, you have a guy who could be promising, like a Chris Harris, who can play slot and outside. You use him. And I think he was disappointed in terms of just breaking his ribs, because he finally got that interception and all that. So I think he'll come back even harder and just ready to perform no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a lot to say about the Giants failing to recognize that they need to put faith in the young guys who are developing.
Mm-hmm.
They far too often come to the conclusion that going into free agency, they have to solve spots that may already have a solution, and they misappropriate money because of it, right? Yeah. You look at wide receiver, we needed a wide receiver 1 in a guy like Kenny Golladay, right? But the problem is he's very injury prone, and our system did not fit his style of play. We did not maximize him. You look at the defensive side. Logan Ryan came here. He had a great season last year. This year he's been iffy. He's been iffy at times. Or you go look at Adoree Jackson. Did we really need Adoree Jackson? The defense has been playing amazing lately without him. You know what I mean? So, you look at guys like Darnay Holmes, and I'm like, I feel like, and Jabrill Peppers, in addition to that, I feel like one of their biggest flaws is they don't have confidence in their young guys, and the young guys feel that. They know that. They know that. You know what I mean? Jabrill's like, and Darnay is like, why am I not getting reps? Do they not feel like I'm a good player? And then you start to doubt yourself. It's about how and that's why the Giants have been so atrociously bad at developing their own talent. They've been forced to go out and solve big positions like cornerback, big positions like interior defensive linemen with money instead of drafting. Look at Daniel Jones. He has taken steps backward 3 consecutive years because of their lack of development. Look at Will Hernandez on the offensive line, lack of development. He's one of our worst offensive linemen this year after having a good rookie season, mind you. Nate Solder has become a absolute turnstile. The guy might as well be working at Trader Joe's. I don't understand, how on earth they've managed to really regress half of their team. And the young guys, in addition to that, so when you're talking about Darnay Holmes, you're talking about Jabrill Peppers, this concept plays into it. They have not done their players with potential any favors, and whether that be a money problem, like something like they don't want to pay guys, whether, that might be Jabrill Peppers. But Darnay Holmes, that really, really frustrated me because I feel like Jabrill Peppers and Darnay, especially, like they showed good coverage abilities. Darnay Holmes, like you said, he can play outside in the slot. Is he better than James Bradberry? I have no idea because we haven't seen him play enough yet to prove it. Yes. But I will say this. They forced James Bradberry to play cover 1 to open the year, and he was beaten up all over the field. He gave up like 6 touchdowns in 4 weeks because he cannot play man coverage. He's too slow. He's a slow corner. Darnay Holmes is better in both.
No, this is what I'll say. I'll say this because last year Bradberry he was a Pro Bowl corner. When you have a bigger guy like that, you have to make sure you use him, and similar to Rasul Douglas in terms with Green Bay, you got to use him to their strengths. More of a cover 3, more of a 2 high where they have safety help and they can play underneath. Like I said, Bradberry did a very good job in terms of DK last year with the Seahawks. He was playing a lot of underneath. With Bradberry also, teams are going to target him or teams are going to test him. They're going to put him on the number 1. I think this is where, like you said, maybe it was just too much confidence in the cover 1. But at the end of the day, we've talked about this. The more opportunities or the more the defense is on the field, it's going to be tough to maintain an offense that everyone is a 5-star athlete, So it's tough, especially for Bradberry. But when you got a receiver who is an elite athlete and he's getting 30 to 40 or maybe 50 chances, it only takes one play to make a touchdown. And unfortunately, those touchdowns count for 6 instead of 1. So, I was, like I said before, and I'm a Bradberry fan. I think I love what he brings. I love his demeanor and his energy. I just think right now, as a group, something has to happen where they all continue to elevate, like you said. Because even with Love, what are we going to do with Love? He's another stud. Even the guy who they picked up in order to be a slot corner. I forgot his name. Aaron Robertson. Yeah. He's a guy. So this is where maybe sometimes you have a lot of too many pieces. Even the chess has a certain amount of pieces on the board. How are we going to use this? So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how the Giants front office maneuvers this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one last thing I want to ask you before we let you go is, do you still have faith in Joe Judge? A lot of people right now are coming out and they're like, it's tough to really, remain confident after 2 years, one of them being a regression year. This one, they've been blown out for 5 games. They haven't scored they've scored 1 touchdown in 3 games, 35 total possessions. The offense is stagnant. Their scheme is a mess. The coaches he's brought in to help them have not done a good job by any means. Now, a lot of that has to do with injury. A lot of that has to do with drafting from previous regimens. There's a lot of factors that go into this. But do you still remain confident that Joe Judge can get the job done? What are you kind of feeling, I guess, from the players that you work with? Is he still a guy that they respect?
I think they do respect him. I have faith in Joe Judge's, how can I say, that he cares. Because I've been around and I've seen coaches who just, throw the towel. I do think he cares about it. I understand he has, the quotes and the speeches and stuff. And I think that works for a lot of other people. And some people it doesn't. But I think this is one of those things where for Judge, being a young coach, these are one of the things where he's just figuring out. Even with Pete Carroll, he didn't have the greatest success when he was with New England Patriots, but he had to figure it out first, become a better coach for the Seahawks. I think for Coach Judge, what he's realizing is sometimes it's not even just the X's and O's. One, it's the luck of the draw of injuries. And then 2, can we resonate or can we put what's on paper to the athletes where they can communicate? I believe that Judge can turn it around. I think he has to turn it around now. There's no There's no choice or opportunity. You got to get it done. It's a big boy league, and I think he's well aware of that. I'm hoping he does because, like I said, I believe in what he says. He says a lot of great things. Now, I just want to see the players mentally absorb that, take it on the field. I think they do the first time. I think this year will be a rude awakening, and I think this offseason is going to be big. And who they hire, who communicates what Joe Judge is trying to do, and ultimately who you keep. You know, this is a situation where, okay, this guy's got to go, this guy stays. This is one of those things about production. So in hindsight, in conclusion, I do believe Joe Judge can get it together. I want to see more. I guess this is a quote that a lot of kids say, where they say less, right? I don't really want to hear a speech. I just want to see the work. So that's where I'm at. I believe that he can put it together and he could do some great things.
Yeah, that was exactly, say less. Joe Judge, stop talking.
Actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah,
actions speak louder than words.
That's it.
Yeah,
so.
It's definitely been a lot of talking, rah, this and that. I want to see action. I want to see actually meaningful stuff behind those words. If you just say stuff, there's no value with words. You got to actually go and do stuff. That's what separates people that are actually respected and ones. And not that Joe Judge isn't doing stuff. I do believe that he's done a lot for the franchise and organization, but it's just not being shown on the football field. And the NFL's is it like you said, it's a game of results, and the head coach has to be held at the same standard as the players. You know what I mean? Because we know the Giants have talent. We know they're a talented team. Problem is the coaches aren't getting it out of them. That's where you start to say, okay, there's something wrong.
No, I mean, like I said, what he did bring to the Giants was structure. I felt like there was something of, okay, we're going this way, rather than it was just all over the place prior to the coaches before. So I did recognize that. I did see more of the confidence in what you believe and what we're going to do, bulletin board stuff. Now I just think, in its year 3, it's year 2, and then going into year 3, it's kind of similar to what Bill Parcells says, where if I'm going to go shopping, I want to be able to buy my own groceries in a sense, So maybe this is the year where Coach Judge is able to buy his own groceries and get his own players that adapts to his system. So, I'm open to it. I'm well aware, and I think makes you realize how important Eli was.
Oh yeah, especially with the injuries and him being there every week kept the offense alive at times. And when you say being able to shop with your own list, that really opens up a can of worms for me that I really don't want to get into right now. Because it's like, because this is the conversation we've had with the general manager spot. Do you bring in a new outsider GM who now has a different ethos, who wants to shake things up, or do you hire someone within that's going to be a yes man to Joe Judge, and they're tied at the hip, one and done if they fail? That's definitely something that's on the table for the Giants right now. I'd say it's a 50-50 shot. They either go with someone new who has the authority to replace Judge, or they hire from within and they allow them to go hand in hand. If they fail, one and done, they're out, and then they replace them and rebuild again.
Quick question: is Gettleman leaving, or
Gettleman's gone? He's gone. He's going to be in the next couple. So he's going to retire. They're letting him retire. I think it's a big middle finger to the fans to even let him retire to begin with. He's completely annihilated this team at certain points, but he's made some decent picks in the past, but his mid-round picks have been just an absolute graveyard. Like a couple guys like Darnay, Lorenzo Carter, some of them have ended up having pretty good seasons and good games, but a lot of them, man, there's a long list of players that aren't even on the team anymore from 3 or 4 years ago. And like I said before, when you have drafts 4 years ago, those guys should still be in the rookie deals right now, and they're no longer on the team. That tells you the team has a lot of trouble developing their own talent. And that's where you see guys like Jabrill, Darnay, they've done a good job on McKinney, Will Hernandez. There's a ton of guys who have just stalled in the progression because they're not developing them appropriately. Why is that? I don't know, because I'm not behind the scenes, but I have to imagine it's a coaching issue.
Well, you know what? In terms of GM, I think now it's becoming apparent that you need a GM who understands the landscape of not just on a board, but are you able to communicate and see, because everything's through social media now, and know who you're drafting. If this guy, you even kind of look at the Raiders where they just had a slew of just character issues. This guy has a character issue, or this person has some type of situations where you need to work on. I think younger GMs might be the new wave or the new energy. I understand, but a guy who's in between, who I've always watched and liked, was the ESPN commentator Louis Riddick, I think his name is. I think
A
he's
lot of people have opinions
I
on
just did a
that.
video about Louis Riddick talking about him as the GM. I like Louis Riddick. I think that he's a smart guy. He's got a lot of experience. I like Louis Riddick.
Yeah, he comes off as a guy who is confident in what he's talking about, but he's confident in his work. And I want a guy where I'm gonna be honest. The reason why I do what I do is not just giving, but I'm obsessed with football. I love this. You want to be with a person who loves it and his family loves it, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have a disconnect where he just goes home and I'm done. No, I think about this every day of the day. I'm on a date and I'm like, damn, what is the Giants gonna do? So, it's one of those things where you have to be able to. It's important. This is a lifestyle, and I think with Lewis, and Coach Riddick or Mr. Riddick, if I ever meet him, but I think he is one of those guys where he gives me a Mike Tomlin feel, where he knows what to say, he knows when to say it, and he knows how to say it to people where they don't feel uncomfortable. So
yeah. I'm also going to throw in a hot take here. The Giants need some diversity in their front office. They're all old white guys.
It's especially what's going on with the platform in the NFL. I think diversity is needed. I'd love to see more of that. And you're totally right. The game is changed. We're new thinkers. We're not the same. All the old school ways, it doesn't help. So I totally agree. I think diversity would be a big part, because a lot of these, and speaking with a person, not in the Giants organization, but in another NFL organization, where they said the reason why we're not winning is because there's a disconnect between the office and the players. They don't understand. Yeah. And they
100%.
might have a guy who's a college guy who just finished his college career at 21, who might go through certain situations like their grandmother has COVID or something in their lifestyle is affecting them. And instead of you just saying, hey, let me go talk to this guy, a lot of executives sometimes just go, he has a bad attitude, let's get rid of him. And you can't do that, because that guy might be a Pro Bowler in the next year, and unfortunately we've seen that with a lot of guys where, it didn't work in this platform and they go somewhere else where people reach out to them and then they open up and they can trust. Football is about trusting, and I think that's important, and that's why diversity is needed. So I agree. I agree.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, because I keep going off on tangents. But I saw a really interesting chart. Yesterday about the most productive and efficient unit of any career anything is the Navy SEALs. Right? They're the best at what they do. The best. And the chart was interesting. You said trust, and it made me think of this, because basically it's a diagram, and the one side of it is trust and one side of it is performance. They would rather have somebody that is average at performance but 100% trustworthy than somebody that is 100% the best performer but cannot be trusted, right? So they would rather sacrifice performance for trust. And I think that sometimes you have to find a healthy balance with that, because we've seen players look at Antonio Brown, for example. You cannot trust him, but he is one of the best performers. He's going to bring some sort of drama to your team. There's guys that even OBJ in his prime, and we love OBJ as Giants fans when he was doing his thing here, but he wasn't trusted at some point here. So you have to find a healthy balance. Otherwise the culture can get a little mixed up. But I do think you were spot on with saying that there is a disconnect here. And I think that is because the front office does not have somebody that can relate to the players. Like a Louis Riddick might have a better chance at relating to the players and being able to connect it. So maybe that's a good point, argument to make.
I think that you touched on a great topic. You thinking about the Antonio Brown situation, there's mental issues, whether it's huge or small, there's something that's affecting him in his performance in everyday life. Right. I think this is where the product, a lot of times people put the product before the person. If he's going through things where maybe he's just been traumatized from outside situations, seek help for this person. Or
Absolutely.
If he's in his tantrum, say, hey, take a day off. One thing I love about Steve Kerr and the Warriors, you can tell that the person's more than the product. you know. And then you also, what I love about, even with Steve Nash, everyone's telling him Kyrie this and extra this. He just stayed the course. When he said when he comes back, we'll welcome him. Matter of fact, when he comes back, we'll start him. What did Kyrie do? Gave him 22 points. They won the game. And it, like we said, the energy. So I've had to learn as a coach that it's our responsibility on how we respond to people, you know, and that's the biggest thing. And I think even touching on Bruce Arians, Bruce is a hard-nosed type of guy where it's my way or the highway, but not everybody's going to respond to that. And I think for Antonio Brown, I was disappointed because kids are watching, you know, and you did it on Broadway. So, of course, it just looked kind of calculated. But I think for Bruce Arians, hopefully he learns that you got to communicate better if there's a disconnect. And so, you know,
I think he's riding his high horse off a Super Bowl win. He's like, I got Tom Brady. Who do I need an AB for? I mean, Chris Godwin's out for the year with the ACL tear, but he's like, I don't need AB. I got Tom Brady. And I think that confidence can give you a little bit too much of an ego.
It becomes cockiness too.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes and you know what I loved about Tom Brady? What he did was when they asked him the question, he said, look, I just care about Antonio the person, and I just got to be compassionate to what he's doing. And I was like, man, instead of being like, you know, trashing him like he's X, Y, and Z, he just said, I hope he's all right, and I'm praying for him as a person. Mm-hmm. And that right there, regardless if you mean it or not, that right there was the high road. And I was a big fan of Tom Brady, you know, besides, you know, the Patriots, but I was a big fan of Tom Brady just in terms of who he is as a person for that. So
yeah, I loved that. That was a great moment from Brady there.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, much love as always for tuning in with us. We definitely covered a lot. I think I could keep going for a long time, but I got to eat before I pass out. You know how it is. You forget to eat. You're so busy sometimes. But you know what? I really appreciate you coming on talking to us about Jabrill, Darnay, Xavier McKinney. You know, these guys who some of them deserve a bigger opportunity. Xavier McKinney, who's gotten that opportunity and run with it and become a Pro Bowl level player. So much love as always for tuning in with us and you know, talking football. It's really, really appreciated. But for everyone tuning into the episode, make sure to like and subscribe below on YouTube. And make sure to go check out Brian Walker on Twitter. DB Academy does some really great work. If you're a young player, you think you got what the goods, you can hook you up with some good skills.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Appreciate you.